Hi everyone, welcome to FB20 Analytics Skills Builder Series, a program that helps you refine and expand your analytic techniques. In our first episode, we'll dive into transforming a flat file like a CSV or Excel into a star schema. I am your host, Tony Hewlett. I'm very excited to take you on this journey. Let's begin by addressing a crucial question. Why is a star schema important? Well, there are two reasons. One, usability. From an end user's perspective, a star schema is cleaner and easier to navigate. Second, performance. It optimizes how Power BI queries and processes the data, resulting in more efficient and faster reports. These core benefits lead to other advantages like faster refreshes and simpler DAX measures. And who doesn't want that? So what exactly is a star schema, you may be asking? A star schema consists of dimension and fact tables. The dimensions represent the who, the what, the where, the how of your business, such as customers, clients, locations, etc. The fact table contains your transactions or events like revenue, clicks, bounce rate, things like that. In this series, we'll transform the Excel dataset that you downloaded from the FB20 Analytics website into a star schema. We will guide you step by step through the process of cleaning and transforming the data, identifying what will make up your dimensions, merging those into a fact table, and validating that all of those relationships make sense and your data is coming through as expected. Let's take a look together at the deliverables to see what we have in store. Okay, so let's quickly walk through the project brief together. This is our scenario. Your company's campaign data is poised for rapid growth, and designing a scalable data model is critical for efficient reporting. While the current data set contains only 3 months worth of data, your task is to transform it into a star schema, ensuring it can handle increasing volumes while maintaining optimal performance. So what's our criteria? We're going to prepare the provided data set by loading, cleaning, and structuring it into a star schema. This includes creating dimension tables with surrogate keys and linking them to a centralized fact table. These are our steps broken down in the deliverables. 1, we're going to load and verify the data set. And in that step, you're also going to determine what's going to make up your dimensions. 2, create those dimension tables. So we'll walk through the steps that you need to take in Power Query in order to do that step. 3, defining the relationships to the tables. Once we've completed all of our work in Power Query, we're going to take a look at the model view and see how we can make those relationships to our fact and dimensions. 4 is to build and validate the star schema. We're also going to take a look at how to create a date dimension as well in step 4. All right, I'm excited to get started. Let's dig in. Welcome everyone to deliverable 1. This is where we're going to import the data set into Power Query and conduct an initial exploration of the data. We're going to confirm that all the columns are loaded correctly, assess data types, and review the structure. Identify attributes that will form dimension tables, for example, date, and our metrics that should remain in the fact table, like clicks. So let's dive into Power BI and take a look. All right, so I've opened up Power BI Desktop and I'm ready to import the data set into Power BI. So I'm going to head over to Get Data and click on the down arrow and choose Excel Workbook. The data set that I'm going to use is at the top here, Marketing Email Campaign Analysis, so I'm going to select that. Once it opens up, it's going to show us the sheets that exist in this workbook. I'm going to select Table 1. If you see both Table 1 and email data, you can choose either. I'm just going to go with Table 1 and load. I'm going to select Transform Data because that's going to open up Power Query for us right away. So now we've got Power Query open. And our next step is to just verify that the data loaded in and there's no errors or inconsistencies. As you can see, I have enabled in the View tab column quality and column distribution. And this allows for valid, error, empty, and this graph at the bottom to pop up. And this is super powerful and useful when you need to go through your data set to check for errors and anything else that might be going on. So we're just going to scroll across and just check to make sure that everything looks good. And I'm going to assume it does because the people at FB20 did a great job when they were preparing this data set. So that looks great. The other thing that you can look for when you go through this step is the data type. So ensuring that if it's text value, it says ABC. If it's a date, it does come up with a calendar in the top left-hand corner. Same thing for any of your metrics. So if on some we have decimals, which makes sense when you're thinking about latitude and longitude. But when we think about something that's just a whole number, that's what you want to see at the top left-hand corner. So our next objective is to identify which columns are going to make up our dimensions. When identifying dimensions, we need to really think about the who, the what, the where, and when of our analysis. Dimensions describe your data. Things like who's involved. So example, our client or campaign. What's happening? Is it a product or event? Where? So where we think country or region. And when is date or time. So of those four, we can already see some dimensions unfolding. And then when we think about fact table, we're looking at clicked, bounced, open. These are the quantitative values that remain in the fact table and are used for calculations, comparisons, trends, and KPIs. So when I look at this, I can see that campaign will create a dimension, conversion target, we mentioned date, we have our client dimension with the email and the segment, we have a country, and we have device. Now that we have identified what is going to make up our dimension in our fact table, before we close this, we're going to rename this query to source data. And that's going to help keep things clean and organized when we're creating our dimension tables in the next step. So congratulations on finishing deliverable 1. I'll see you in the next video. Welcome to deliverable 2, where we're going to generate clean dimension tables by extracting unique records for the attributes we identified in deliverable 1. First, let's clarify surrogate keys and primary keys. A primary key is a unique identifier for a record in the source data, like client ID in a customer database. In contrast, a surrogate key is created when a data set lacks a natural primary key, often seen in flat files without unique identifiers for attributes, like campaign and device. Surrogate keys ensure consistency as data sets grow. We're going to use Power Query to add surrogate keys for dimensions such as campaign, client, and device, which will allow for effective linking in the fact table in our other deliverables. Let's head over to Power BI and get started. Okay, we're in Power BI Desktop, and we are going to create our first dimension table. We come over to the Query section and right-click on Source Data and select Duplicate. What we've done is created an exact copy of our source data table. Let's select campaign name to start, okay? So I'm going to select campaign name and campaign type. I hit Control-click to highlight both of those two. Now, in order to remove other columns, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this next step. Because we're only keeping 2, what I like to do is go up to Remove Columns and select Remove Other Columns. When I click on that, all those other columns go away, and you can see that this step is there, right? It's right here. Now that we've completed that step, we need to remove duplicate rows using the Remove Duplicates option. This is up here under the Remove Rows, and you click on the down arrow and select Remove Duplicates. This is a really great tool to use in scenarios like this, but I will say use caution when using Remove Duplicates for other situations because you can remove more than you're intending to. So just keep that in mind. So the next thing we're going to do before we add our surrogate key is sort the campaign name column. And this helps to ensure consistency in the index assignment when we're joining to the fact table. So this is a step that I like to include. And then we go to add column and select index column. You can choose from 0 or from 1 or custom. Custom can be nice too if you're starting to get into a little bit more complicated indexes. I'm just going to select from 1. And you can see it now has 1 to 23. Now, the last step that we need to do is rename our index column to identify it as a surrogate key. Naming conventions can vary depending on your organization. I'm going to rename this one to SID underscore campaign. And the SID just stands for surrogate ID. Now that we're all done, our last step will be to name this, give it a unique name. And so our dimension deals with campaign information. So I'm going to name it dim underscore campaign. And then we're done. So now we just need to repeat those steps for every other dimension that we identified. Okay, now we have completed all of our dimension tables. So we have one for campaign, conversion, client, country, and device. We are now done deliverable 2. In the next step, we're going to explore how we connect all of these dimensions back into our source data and clean up that file as well before loading it into Power BI Desktop. Okay, welcome everyone to deliverable 3. This is where we're going to join the dimension tables to the fact table by merging the queries on those shared attribute keys that we just created. And we're going to ensure that the fact table only retains the necessary metric and keys that we're going to need to join and create those relationships. So without further ado, let's head back into Power BI. Okay, so now we're back in Power BI Desktop, and I have selected that source data table. Now that we're in this table, we're going to merge on certain fields and then grab that surrogate key that we created into the dimension table and add it to this source data table. Okay, so this is what that looks like. We're going to select the home and go to merge queries. And on this drop down in merge queries, we're going to merge it to this table. There's an option to do a merge query as new. Very useful in situations, but we're going to do it this way. So we're going to start with dim campaign. And in order to join from one table to the other, we have to find something that it can match on. Now, again, typically when you do joins, you want to pick a unique key. But in this case, we have a text field, and that's what we have to use. So if we go to campaign name, the next thing I need to identify too is that because we had campaign name and campaign type in the same dimension, you have to select the one that is unique to that dimension table. So before we do this, let's just pop back into this dimension table so you can see what I'm talking about. So our campaign type, we have repeatable attributes. So events and webinars, newsletters, promotions, that shows up multiple times. But on the left-hand side here, these are the things that only show up once. So that's going to be our key. That's what this SID campaign is created off of, are these unique attributes here. Essentially what we've done is created a hierarchy within this dimension table. Okay, so we're going to go back to source data and select the merge queries and merge queries. So now we come back to that campaign name in our source data table, and then we're going to select dim campaign and select campaign name. Now, you can see at the bottom here, it was kind of spooling, and it's going to let you know how many matches that you're going to get from the first table and the second table. And we want to select a left outer join. So a left outer join is going to ensure that all the rows from the left table, which in our case is our source data table, are retained, even if there's no matching rows in the right table. We need to ensure that nothing gets taken out, but we also don't want to bring anything in that doesn't match. So we're going to select OK. And then we have this option here. So this dim campaign column has arrived and it has this table where you can pop it out. So I'm going to select at the top here this button with those two arrows going in opposite directions. This is where we can select what we're going to bring into the source data table. I'm going to deselect use original column names as a prefix because I find it's messy. Sometimes it's important, but I don't need it. And I'm only going to select this SID. That's the only thing we want from that table. And I'm going to select OK. So now you can see under SID campaign, we've brought in those ID fields, and they're going to be assigned based on that campaign name. But now we have multiples of them because this is our fact table. These is a transactional table. Things are happening. So now what we can do is we can remove anything that is an attribute or text value that exists in our dimension in our fact table. And that's going to help clean this up, and it's going to make it a lot more performant. So I'm going to select choose columns, and I'm going to deselect campaign name and campaign type and OK. So now we've removed those from our, what will end up being our fact table. So we're going to do the exact same thing for every other dimension, just as I did there. We're going to apply the merge on a left outer join, only bring in the SID from the dimension table, and then remove that attribute that exists in that dimension table. Okay, so now you can see that we have added all of those surrogate keys into our main source data table. Our next step is we're going to rename this to be our fact underscore marketing campaign. And the other step that I did there is removed any of those attributes that are going to show up in the dimension once we create the relationship between our keys to our fact table and our dimension tables. Now, what you will notice is I didn't create a dim date in here, but we did retain the date sent column because that we're going to use that as our key for our date dimension when we get to deliverable 4. So congratulations on completing deliverable 3, which was a very important step in creating a star schema for your semantic model. Welcome to deliverable 4. Congratulations on making it this far. In this last objective, we're going to load the dimension and fact tables into the data model and establish the appropriate relationships, create a date dimension, and validate the schema by running sample queries to confirm accurate relationships and consistent data. Let's pop over into Power BI and finish up. Okay, so we're back in Power BI desktop, and we're going to hit the close and apply button, and we're going to wait for the data to load. It shouldn't take too long. Now that the data is loaded, we're going to go to the model view. So we'll click on that, and you can see because I have detect relationships enabled in my settings that Power BI has gone ahead and created the relationships between all of our dimensions that we just made. What I'm going to call out, very important based on the steps that we were doing to remove duplicates, that anything coming from a dimension to our fact table has a relationship of one to many. So if I open up the properties panel, you can see the relationship information here. The first table is our fact market campaign table, and we are creating our relationship on our SID client to our table dim client SID client. And it has done all of that work for us. Now, the only thing that we are missing is a date table. You can use Power Query. So I didn't do that, but there is a step in Power Query that you can use to create a date table. You can also use a data flow if you have one already existing where you have a calendar or a date dimension. You can use a DAX query to create a calculated table, or you can use an external tool. So I'm going to use DAX to create our calendar dimension. I'm going to go to the view up here and go to Table Tools and create a new table. Now, I will say that there are a lot of external tools and websites out there that will already have DAX written for you. You can use ChatGPT to help you write that. But essentially what we're going to use is we're going to call on the calendar auto function and add some columns to create our date table. So I'm going to call this dim underscore date equals, and you can see that there's calendar and calendar auto available to us. Now, calendar auto will scan entire model to see what our start and end dates are and base the dimension values off of that. So I'm just going to copy and paste an existing DAX measure that I have in a different model. And as you can see, what this has done is it's scanned through our entire data set to determine kind of our start and end dates. And then it's now added using the add columns function, year, month, month sorting, date, day name, etc. And if you need more columns, you can just add those underneath them using the correct logic for that particular field. So I'm going to hit the commit button. And then the last thing we need to do, it's very important to remember this step, is to mark this as a date table. So I'm going to select on. It's asking me to choose which column. Usually it only defaults to date, but if you also have a date sit in here, which is quite common if it's coming from like source, then you would use that one as your date. So now that we've done that, our time intelligence calculations are going to work effectively and how we want them to. One thing to bear in mind too is if you have the auto date time enabled in your settings, disable that. Where you can find that is in File, go to Options and Settings, Options, and when it pops up, it says Time Intelligence, Auto Date Time for new files is disabled. I have that as a global setting, which means that every time I open up Power BI, it's not going to load in that auto date time. This uses up a lot of resources and a lot of memory. So just double check that you don't have that enabled. Okay, so now we're going to come back to our model that we've added our date. And this one is kind of off to the side and it didn't create that relationship. So let's create a relationship between date and our date sent. And it's just verifying that that's what we want to do. It's going to be a one-to-many, and we're going to make this relationship active. And we'll select save. Perfect. So now, I don't know if you can see it, but we have created a star schema. So congratulations on creating your first star schema from a flat table. We're not done yet. We are going to verify to make sure that everything is working as expected. So how we can do that is pull in let's just make a table really quickly. We're going to pull in an attribute from country. So we got all of our countries. And then let's go to our fact marketing campaign. And normally, of course, you would create measures, explicit measures, so that you can continue to build additional metrics and calculations off of that. But for today, we're just going to grab in that implicit measure and see if it works. And it does. And the way I know it does is because each line has a different value in it. If you see a scenario where the number is repeated all the way down, then you know you have an issue with your relationship. And that's where you can start to troubleshoot and figure out, maybe I didn't create my dimension properly. I might have connected it on the wrong key when I was doing that merge operation. So there's a lot of different things that you can troubleshoot just to ensure what might be going on. So that's it. Congratulations. This was a very complicated concept, which I hope was simplified for your first ever Skills Builder series. Congratulations again for completing the first ever Skills Builder series. I hope you had fun and found it insightful. From all of us at FB20 Analytics, stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.